Hello, friends. Thank you for being here. Each of you makes this channel alive and special. Thanks to your support, I can share stories, thoughts, and emotions that hopefully resonate in your heart. If you have just started exploring my content, welcome. Real-life stories are waiting for you here. Subscribe, like, and share your impressions. Your voice is very important to me. I'm sitting there, waiting as the mechanic takes a look at my car. Out of nowhere, he gets this terrified look on his face, like he's just seen a ghost. He leans in and whispers urgently, "Whatever you do, don't drive this thing. It's primed for disaster." Right at that moment, my phone dings with a new message from my son. "Dad, you're on the clock." Now, what he wanted me to do, you'd never guess. This whole mess kicked off around 5 p.m. on a Monday, right at the start of March. I'd been chilling on the couch in my living room for about an hour, just watching the day drift by, with the fridge humming in the background. It had been 3 quiet months since Glenn stormed out, slamming the door so hard it shook the whole house. And Ma's expression, she looked at me like I was something nasty stuck to her shoe. When my phone flashed with Glenn's name calling, my heart skipped a beat. Glenn was gentle, almost apologetic. "Dad, Ma and I have been talking. We miss you. How about you join us for dinner tonight? We're having pot roast, your favorite, with those little potatoes you love so much." I should have seen it coming. Anyone who wasn't sleepwalking through life would have. But I was just a weary 63-year-old, tired of the silence and the freezer dinners meant for a family long gone, back before Sarah left us, back when Glenn still looked up to me. "I'd love that, son," I blurted out. "What time?" "7 on the dot. Don't make us wait. We'll be ready." As soon as we hung up, I just sat there gripping my phone, feeling a wave of relief. My chest was lighter than it had been in ages, but then, that nagging memory bubbled up. Glenn, his face as red as a tomato, veins visible on his neck, spit flying as he shouted, "35,000? That's nothing to you with your nest egg in the house, and I'm your son." His voice was raw, desperate, tinged with something darker. "I'm in deep trouble, and you're hoarding cash like a regular Scrooge." I held it together, drawing on all those years of keeping a poker face during audits. "Glenn, I can't just hand over money for a project you won't even describe. You call it an investment, but there's no plan, no details. Let's sit down and look at the figures properly. I'm your son. All this is mine eventually. So why not help now when I need it?" It wasn't his anger that froze me. It was the assumption that everything I'd worked for was just his waiting inheritance. He stormed out, whacking the door frame hard enough to leave a mark that's still there. Ma just stood there in the doorway, silent and cold, then followed him to the car. I shook off the memory, got up from the couch that had been molded to my shape over the past months, and went to freshen up. Glenn had reached out. Maybe things would mend. Maybe I'd been doing too much auditor stuff, not enough dad stuff. By 6, I had my nice blue shirt on, the one Sarah bought me ages ago, keys in hand, wallet in my back pocket. The garage smelled of concrete and old oil, tools I never used hanging neatly because of my neighbor's organizing. I slid into my 2019 Honda Accord, dependable, normal, classic retirement car. Turned the key. The starter was powerful, but the engine? Nothing. Tried again. Same result. The dashboard lit up just fine. Battery good, gas almost full. I lifted the hood, hoping maybe the engine would speak to me. I didn't notice anything off, but engines are Greek to me. Budgets and spreadsheets. That's my jam, not car guts. Then my phone buzzes with another message from Glenn. "Dad, we're waiting. Tick-tock." Frustration started creeping up my spine. My dad's voice over the phone had a wobble, almost like a knife edge ready to slice through. Letting him down wasn't on my agenda, not with us finally starting to talk again, after a silence that felt endless. 3 months feeling like 3 years. So I buckled down, called a tow company, gave them my location, and started pacing the messed-up driveway. The dispatcher assured me help was on the way in 20 minutes. The battered asphalt under my feet, with its spreading cracks, stood as a reminder of everything I'd ignored since Sarah's death. The world felt like it was breaking apart, one bit at a time. Then my phone buzzed, dragging me from my thoughts with a message that read, "Everything's ready." I started drafting an explanation about my car problems, but stopped, made it sound like just an excuse. So I tried again, fingers tapping nervously, noticing they were unsteady. A new quirk, either stress or maybe those old age signs creeping up. The 30 to 40-minute wait felt much longer, but finally the tow truck showed up. As I got into the cab, I directed the driver to head for Vernon's auto shop, probably the only spot still lit up that late. The driver chatted as he drove, catching my eye in the mirror, a cheery, round face talking about today's cars with all their gadgets and issues. "These new cars, one little fault, and everything freezes up," he said with a nod. "But Vernon's good, he can sort it out." I nodded back, eyes wandering outside to the neighborhood I'd seen change over time, the houses, the street where Glenn learned to ride his bike. "Got to be somewhere tonight," I muttered. "Kind of important." My car, trailing behind the truck, felt symbolic of the life scene I was stuck in, a dinner invite meant to bridge the gap of our long separation. I should be cautious, but being alone in that house echoing with memories of Sarah was smothering. Had I been unfair to Glenn, too adamant, should have just helped him without the grilling? He's all I have, and if he was extending a hand, I needed to meet him halfway. Hope's fragile, but maybe we had a shot at piecing our relationship together. We pulled into Vernon's at 7 sharp, the place lit up like day with its industrial lights. A mechanic in stained overalls gave us a nod as the tow truck released my car with a strained creak. I stepped out, feeling my stiff knees complain. "You must be Joe Vernon. I'm here with that urgent car issue," I said as I walked up. "Got to see my son tonight." Joe nodded, eyes fixed on the car, reflecting. "Let's hoist it up and see what's going on," he said, motioning to the side. "Coffee's in the waiting area, not fresh, but it's warm. It'll probably just be a bit." Inside, the waiting area was steeped in the smell of stale coffee and rubber, with chairs that seemed as worn as everything else. Through the scratched window, I watched Joe working to lift my car. I sighed and checked my phone, 7:23. A message from Glenn. "Dad, where are you?" 5 minutes later, another message. "The food's getting cold. We're waiting." The urgency hit with each alert. Apologies spilled clumsily from my fingers onto the screen. Every minute ticked by slowly, and all the while, Joe was methodically working beneath the car, until suddenly he shot up, a look of dread visible even from a distance. He rushed toward me, hands still shaking as he entered. "Mr. Gray," he began, voice tense and grave, "you really need to see this." As I followed Joe into the shop, the glaring lights from above exposed far too much. When his flashlight beam fell on the brake lines, it revealed a sharp, deliberate cut, not something that happened by chance. "This wasn't an accident," Joe whispered softly. "Somebody wanted you to have a bad wreck, maybe something worse." He swung the beam over to the engine sensor, which turned out to be messed with too. Eventually, the engine would kick in but die later, possibly when you're zooming down the highway and when you hit the brakes. The grim picture he painted hung heavy in the air. Then, my phone buzzed, showing Glenn's name alongside the word, "Hurry." I gazed at it as my stomach knotted with dread. Hurry? To what exactly? A deadly crash on Route 309? Memories can really sneak up on you sometimes. It was late, about 2:30 a.m. on a Sunday, when I heard a screeching metal noise coming from the garage. I lay there, figuring it was nothing, maybe just the cats or the wind. But Glenn had a spare key. He knew the car was always parked in the garage. Glenn. My head spun as I leaned against the car fender to steady myself. Years of being an auditor kicked in, making me stay cool like I did when unearthing fraud. This was another kind of theft, Somebody was after my life. "Joe, I need a full record of this," I told him calmly. "Photograph every tampered bit. Write down everything. Don't touch anything. Leave it just how it is." Joe gazed at me, trying to comprehend. "Mr. Gray, we should call the police. This might be attempted murder." "I'm aware," I replied softly, "and I'll handle it. But first, the documentation has to be complete. Do you know who has garage access?" Joe asked, with a hint of suspicion. "Who could want you dead? Let's keep the car here overnight. Don't fix a thing, just document it all." I stepped out into the cool March evening. The parking lot was empty, and I paced around to gather my thoughts. From the window, I watched Joe take photos, jotting down what he saw. The phone buzzed. Glenn again. "Dad, hurry." I stared at that message for what felt like 5 long minutes. 35 grand was the sum Glenn asked for 3 months ago, and I said no. Was that the moment his plan took shape? Maybe after Sarah's passing, realizing I was still around and so was the inheritance? How long had my own son been plotting against me? I typed, "Car issues. Can't make it tonight." "My apologies." He replied in a flash, "When can you come?" His quick answer said a lot. He was waiting. The both of them were, sitting there baffled as to why their plan hadn't worked. "I'll let you know." Joe handed me the evidence, which I tucked into my jacket. "Is there a rental car place that's open?" He told me about an Enterprise a few blocks down. Opening my rideshare app, I saw a car was 6 minutes away. The phone buzzed with another message from Glenn. "Dad." My finger hovered above the screen, and it all clicked. This wasn't a friendly get-together invite. It was a setup. They meant for me to drive the sabotaged car, let it break down, make it look like an accident, a fatal one. They'd gain everything, the house, savings, insurance, all neat and tidy. I shut the app without responding. The rideshare was arriving soon. I had places to go and people to see. Glenn would have to play the waiting game, just like I had after that call I should never have taken months ago. Just like he thought he'd wait for word of my crash tonight. But I didn't crash, and now I knew who had been out to get me. As I stood there, feeling the weight of the envelope in my pocket, car lights swept across the parking lot, casting long shadows. My ride showed up, and I slid into the back seat, rattling off the address for the rental car place. The trip was a blur of passing streetlights and my own face reflecting back at me in the window, a 63-year-old man who had just realized his own son wanted him gone. The auditor in me kicked in, sorting facts and forming a plan in the back of my mind. But below that cool exterior, something else sat, a colder, more calculating part of me that knew exactly how to play the long game. Glenn botched it tonight. He failed at getting rid of me, which meant I had time to devise my own plan. The ride got me to the rental place, just a few blocks from Joe's shop. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, a young attendant barely looked at me as he checked my info. 20 minutes later, I found myself in a silver Camry that reeked of artificial pine. My phone sat dark beside me, Glenn's messages waiting there like silent accusations. Starting the car, I took off onto the main drag, heading north towards Lansdale, about a half-hour drive past a mess of strip malls and traffic lights. My grip on the wheel was steady, but my thoughts were spinning, turning over numbers and motives like I'd done for decades as a government auditor. The motive was clear as day, my estate. Everything was set to go to him. Over 600 grand in assets, a house in Chestnut Hill evaluated at nearly $500,000 last year, savings, retirement funds, and a life insurance policy for 100 grand that I'd held since Glenn's birth. It was all meant for him once I kicked the bucket. Only I wasn't supposed to go gently into that good night. Monday was meant to be the end of the line for me on Route 309, when the brakes gave out at highway speed. The clues were glaring. Glenn had a house key for emergencies, back when I trusted him enough. He knew my habits, knew how to get in through the garage, and which door latch was stubborn in winter. And this past weekend? 2 hours vanished at the store on Saturday, and I'd been at the farmer's market Sunday morning. He had plenty of time to slip in, do his dirty work, and slip out. And that noise at 2:30 in the morning? I bet he thought he'd left quietly, not realizing the door made enough noise to wake me. It all added up, as tidy as a ledger balanced to the cent. As I sat at a red light, lost in thought, I remembered our argument from 3 months ago. It wasn't just about money. It was a loaded conversation that I hadn't taken seriously enough. I heard his words clearer now. "You're sitting pretty while I'm drowning in red ink." He'd slammed the table, and Ma just stood by, arms folded, icy and silent. Glenn ended with, "It'll all belong to us soon enough anyway." "Ours," he said, "not mine." It was like he was speaking about the present, not some distant future. But then, I'd heard it as a father, not an investigator. I should have been wearing my auditor's hat. By the time I hit Lansdale, it was around 9. Quiet streets lined with boxy houses built in the 80s greeted me, everyone cozied up for the night. I spotted Glenn's place halfway down Maple Street, aglow like a store display. I parked around the corner, out of sight but in a prime position to observe. Old habits die hard. I cracked open my notebook and logged the time at the top of a clean page. Inside, Glenn was pacing back and forth, his eyes glued to his phone, with Ma firing sharp gestures at him by the dining table. Even from my car, I could feel her anger. The quick flashes of her movements said it all. Glenn didn't budge, just kept at it with his phone, while Ma grew more and more animated. I adjusted the mirror, settling in to watch, my phone still buzzing quietly in my pocket as the minutes ticked by. The real story was all about what wasn't there, what was missing. The empty dinner table, no pot roast, no small potatoes, all signs of a reconciliation meal absent. Instead, the scene was neatly organized papers, unmistakably legal, stacked just like the estate and property transfer documents I'd examined countless times. It wasn't a family dinner at all. It was a prep session for a transfer. The dinner was a farce. The paperwork lay there, ready to roll, just awaiting the green light of my demise. Through the window, I snapped photos with my phone, the instinct to gather evidence kicking in. Glenn kept checking his phone, showing Ma something that set her off. She threw her arms up, snapping something harsh back. He answered defensively. They were on edge, waiting for the call. Police, an emergency room, someone confirming the accident they were expecting. My hands gripped the wheel so tightly they ached. This was Glenn, my own son, the boy I taught to ride his first bike, play catch, the one I supported through school and his wedding day. And here he was, creeping into my garage, slicing my brake lines with grim determination, while I slept none the wiser above him. This wasn't a moment of madness. It was cold, calculated betrayal. The son I thought I knew might have never existed. I jotted down the details. 8:47 p.m., Glenn pacing, phone glued to his hand, Ma upset, documents prepped for the inevitable estate shift. Caught in the middle of preparing for dinner, I felt the weight of the anticipated call hanging over me. With years spent untangling webs of theft and fraud, I knew how vital it was to stay cool, let the numbers narrate the truth. Numbers never lied. Here, all signs pointed to motive, means, and opportunity. This wasn't some tragic coincidence. The threat remained, looming over the target's safety and wealth. The next logical step was clear: take measures to protect. I started the car, slinking away from the curb with headlights off until I was out of sight. Mentally, I was already several moves ahead, ensuring I left no trace behind. The highway to Chestnut Hill was barren, lit only by streetlights. I drove impeccably, keeping to the speed limit, signaling every turn, my hands steady even though a storm brewed inside. My phone buzzed from its spot on the seat. Glenn, texting, "Dad, are you okay? I'm worried." That single word, worried, felt like venom in the quiet car. I took the exit home, the same house where Glenn had once worked through his anger out in the garage. Another message came through, But I ignored it, focused on my own plans, mapping, readying, making moves. If Glenn wanted a fight over the inheritance, he was up for a surprise. I'd written the playbook over the past 40 years, and now it was time to enforce it. Rolling into my driveway just before 10, I lingered in the rental, looking at the house that had been my home for the last 30 years. Memories surged, of Glenn in the garage, where the betrayal first lay in wait, the backyard where his old swing used to be. Even the window of his childhood room stung with loss. Everything seemed different now. I stepped out, locked up, and slipped silently through my front door, keeping the lights off. I settled at my usual place at the kitchen table, replaying how Glenn had made the salt shaker fly just months ago. Hours passed as I filled a notebook with detailed notes, assessing assets, outlining a game plan, and marking crucial points. This was my sweet spot, following the money trails, spotting the flaws, building a powerful case. By dawn, I'd woven together a strong strategy. By 7 a.m. on Tuesday, I had a full-fledged plan in place. After jumping out of the shower and slipping into some fresh clothes, I was all set for the day and grabbed my phone. Glenn had sent me at least a dozen messages throughout the night, each one sounding more and more frantic. "Dad, please answer. I'm really worried. Should I come check on you?" he wrote. I carefully thought about my reply, choosing my words wisely. "Sorry, son. My car broke down. It's at the shop. We'll have to reschedule dinner." I watched as dots popped up on the screen, showing me that he was typing away. He must have been keeping a close eye on his phone, waiting for me to get back to him. "Of course, Dad. I'm just glad you're all right," he finally responded. I read those words twice, and they sounded off-key, like a piano that needed tuning. I could see through his facade. The plan had been to find me lifeless along Route 309 due to brake failure, but here I was, still kicking, leaving him the one out of sorts now. Come 9 o'clock, I was sitting across from Mark Davis, an attorney whose office was plastered with framed diplomas. His sharp gaze said he was someone who knew his stuff, especially when it came to handling estates. I hadn't yet brought up any notions of attempted murder. My questions were more about tweaking a will, understanding inheritance laws in Pennsylvania, and cutting someone off as a beneficiary. Davis ran through the process, scribbling notes until he paused. "It's pretty straightforward, Mr. Gray," he told me. "But you should know, families can challenge these sorts of changes." I dropped my voice low. "What if someone tried to harm me to speed up getting the inheritance?" His pen stopped mid-scribble. "That's another conversation entirely, Mr. Gray," he replied, more serious now. "According to Pennsylvania law, anyone who tries to hurt you to gain financially automatically loses their inheritance. Plus, they'd be looking at major felony charges, possibly 10 to 20 years in prison." I explained I wanted to see my legal options before making any formal accusations. He gave me a penetrating look. "How certain are you?" he pressed. "I'm still putting it all together," I answered. My next stop was the police station, meeting with Detective Rodriguez, a man around his mid-40s, looking weary, with a tie that had definitely seen coffee spills. I handed over pictures, a statement from Joe Werner, and outlined my story. Rodriguez listened intently, jotting notes even as his expression stayed firm. "Mr. Gray, I get that this is a terrifying situation for you," he said, "but without proof of who got into your garage and did the cutting, we're stuck. Do you have any security footage or witnesses?" He sighed heavily. "All right," he continued. "We'll start a report then. I'll send someone over to check the car's condition. But I have to be straight with you. Without hard evidence, we're only looking at property damage right now. Maybe an attempted vehicular manslaughter charge, but we'd need to link it to someone. Do you have anyone in mind you suspect?" Meeting his gaze head-on, I replied, "I can't just toss around accusations. I need certainty. But believe me, I'm on it." The day ended with the sun going down as I sat on the back porch, exhausted, but too restless to turn in for the night. I noticed some movement. My neighbor Barbara Clark was coming over, 2 steaming mugs in hand. She's 61, her silver hair soft around her sharp, insightful eyes, something I hadn't really picked up on before. "Your lights were on all night," she said, skipping pleasantries. "You haven't been home all day. What's going on, Sylvester?" Her straight shooting felt like a truth serum, so I laid it all out for her, watching closely for any hint of judgment. She set her tea down gently. "4 years ago," she began, "my daughter tried to declare me incompetent. She wanted my house, my savings. She said I was senile, potentially dangerous to myself, even had doctors on standby, paperwork and everything." Her eyes locked with mine, full of empathy and sorrow. "I understand what you're feeling. That betrayal, disbelief that your own child could—" She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. "When my daughter pulled her stunt," Barbara continued, "I wanted to believe it was just a misguided act, not true cruelty." She leaned a bit closer. "But Sylvester, when people reveal their true nature, believe them, especially family, they know just how to inflict the deepest cuts. He's my only child," I admitted, my voice betraying me with a crack. "You've got to shield yourself, make sure he faces the consequences, or he'll think he can get away with it again," Barbara said, her words firm and resolute. As her words hung in the crisp evening breeze, I finally confessed, "I've spent 4 decades tracking down fraud, following leads and uncovering lies. But this situation is different. It's my own son. I was there for every milestone, from changing his diapers to teaching him to ride a bike. And now, I'm gathering evidence against him like he's just any other client?" Barbara squeezed my hand tightly. "When he chose to cut those brake lines, he made himself more than just your son. You're not the one betraying Sylvester. He did. Keep that in perspective." Just before midnight, as she got up to leave and paused by the porch steps, she offered a few last words. "In the coming days, you might doubt yourself, second-guess things. You could wonder if you're blowing all this out of proportion." She looked back at me, her eyes steady. "But you're not. Trust your instincts and the evidence. And remember, I'm nearby if you need anything. Anytime you want, I'm here." I watched her figure dissolve into the night, small yet undeniably strong. My phone buzzed with a text from Glenn. "Dad, when can we meet again? I'd love to see you." I texted back, "I'll let you know. Got some stuff to handle first." He shot back quickly. "Like what? Making sure I don't end up with anything after you almost took me out?" But I kept it simple. "Just personal things. Talk soon." Then, I turned my phone off for the night. Finally inside, I trudged upstairs to my bedroom, a place I hadn't seen in nearly 2 days. On my nightstand was an open notebook waiting for me with tomorrow's tasks. 1. Change locks. 2. Set up security cameras. 3. Update my will, disinheriting Glenn and stating why. I sighed and closed my eyes. Sleep came as a deep, uninterrupted darkness. When Wednesday morning came, I woke up feeling surprisingly clear-headed. Sunlight snuck in through my bedroom window, hinting at the first good rest I've had since Monday. The notebook was still there, a silent reminder of what needed doing. I got on with my day, a shower, getting dressed, and relishing a coffee. Once ready, I turned my phone back on. There were 3 messages waiting. One from Glenn. "Dad, you there?" Sent just an hour ago. I took my time, letting him wait. Patience is its own sort of power. Mid-morning, the phone rang. It was Glenn's voice, warm and filled with a false concern that was nearly convincing. "Dad, what about dinner tomorrow? Thursday? We'd love to see you." I kept my answer breezy. "Thursday's a bit packed, son. How about Friday? That way I can wrap up this car issue by then." I could almost sense desperation veiled in his quick agreement. "Friday works. Perfect." As night fell, I found myself gazing at my reflection in the kitchen window. Playing the part of the clueless father was tougher than anticipated. but necessary. By late morning, Barbara came over, and we made our way to see Mark Davis. The place had a different vibe this time. Davis spread out multiple documents across his sleek desk, sample wills, summaries of inheritance laws, and criminal statutes. "If we're pursuing this," he said, glancing between us, "we need a comprehensive plan. Changing your will protects your assets. But if Glenn pulls another stunt, we need indisputable proof for criminal charges." Barbara leaned forward with interest. "I've worked with private detectives during my years in family law. We could put surveillance in Sylvester's garage. If Glenn makes another move..." Davis nodded in agreement. "We might even catch him in attempted burglary. Better yet, conspiracy for murder if we establish intent." I signed the new will decisively. My estate would go to the Montgomery County Children's Hospital Foundation. Glenn's share? A single dollar, explained with the phrase, "for reasons known to my son." Later, Barbara introduced me to Carlos Mendoza, a private investigator she'd collaborated with before. He was a soft-spoken man in his late 40s, carrying a black bag brimming with devices. In the garage, he set up 2 high-definition cameras, one above the main entry, and the other focused on the workbench where my Honda was parked post-repair from Vera's shop. "These are motion sensors," Mendoza informed me, "equipped with night vision. All footage is saved directly to the cloud, so tampering is impossible. If he returns, we'll have everything documented: video, times, the works." It took 3 hours of work and set me back $1,200. When I signed that check, I didn't hesitate. It was better than organizing a funeral, you know. Soon after, a locksmith arrived. He swapped out every single lock: front door, back door, even the garage side entrance. All new keys and deadbolts. That set me back $380. Changing the locks was one thing, but it really hit home when I sent Glenn a message. "Hey son, came across the spare key you left ages ago. Should I return it?" I saw those little typing bubbles pop up, disappear, and then come back. He was really wrestling with his answer. Eventually, his response popped up. "No, Dad, you keep it." That grim smile slipped across my face. He'd figured out how he got into the house the other night, and now he knew I was aware. As the cozy evening rolled in, Barbara asked me over to her porch. We sunk into those friendly, creaky wooden chairs, eyes on the stars as they began to dot the sky. Silence was our companion for a while. Then Barbara placed her hand over mine, warm and a little rough, thanks to her gardening habit. "You're not facing this alone," she said softly. I looked down at our hands, mine spotted with age, hers smaller, but worn too. "I haven't felt this close to someone since my wife passed," I admitted. "Thought I'd close that book." Barbara gently squeezed my hand. "Maybe you're on a new page. In tough times, yes, but maybe it's a start." We sat there as the night settled in, 2 people betrayed by their children finding unexpected comfort together. The stars twinkled even brighter above. With the porch light off, it felt private. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked before lapsing into quiet again. I noticed her hand's warmth once more, the whisper of lavender soap, and the comfort in her presence. Eventually, I said, "I should probably head out, let you get some rest." Her eyes met mine in the dim light. "Or, you could hang out a bit longer. Not tired?" Honestly, neither was I. Not tired of finding or offering support, but not even close to sleepy. We stayed put as the night deepened. When I finally got up to leave, she walked me to the gate. "Friday, when you meet Glenn for dinner, be on your guard. Cameras will catch everything, and the will has changed. You'll be all right." She put a gentle hand on my arm. "I'm not talking about physical harm. I mean the emotions. You'll have to pretend all is normal. Harder than you might expect." She nailed it. I knew she was right, but Friday was barreling towards me regardless. Thursday morning came around fast, and soon enough, confirmation dinged through. Mark Davis called at 9:30. "It's all finalized," he said right off the bat. "Your new will is signed, notarized, secure as a rock. One copy's in my office vault, another's heading for your bank's safe deposit." Standing there with the phone, I felt something shift inside. Not exactly peace, but something foundational, like things settling into place. Feeling grounded, like a well-built house perched firmly on its base. I let out a deep breath, thanked Mark. Now, the will clearly states that my son is disinherited because of reasons he's well aware of. Once this comes out, it's a clear message that there are specific reasons behind my choices, giving a solid defense against any legal disputes. After hanging up, I poured myself another coffee and thought about my next move. Later in the morning, I reached out to Glenn. I kept it easy going, just like an old-timer might, chatting about life's odds and ends. "Son," I started, "I've been mulling things over. This house? A real handful. Way too much space, more yard than I can handle. I talked to a financial advisor about possibly selling and maybe settling somewhere cozier, like senior living. That's got the maintenance covered and comes with activities to boot." "Why on earth are you thinking about selling the house, Dad?" Glenn interjected suddenly, his voice full of disbelief. "It's such a beautiful place, your home." I pretended not to notice the concern in his tone. "Well, I might be able to get around $450,000 for it, maybe even $500K if the market cooperates. That kind of cash could keep me comfortable, even let me travel a bit, like to Europe or Alaska. I've always dreamed of seeing those places." I could almost hear the worry in his breathing. "We seriously need to discuss this," Glenn suggested carefully. "Let's chat about it at dinner tomorrow before you do anything." That worked for me. Later, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. When I picked up, it was Ma, calling directly for the first time in ages. Her voice was unusually sweet. "Sylvester, Glenn told me you're considering selling the house. I figured I'd reach out. Remember, I work in real estate. I could handle the sale and ensure you get top dollar. I'd even give you a family discount on my fee." I played along, acting the trusting, older guy. "That's very thoughtful, Ma. I'll definitely mull it over," I replied. She continued, "You know, those retirement places can be costly. It's important not to burn through your savings too swiftly. Maybe we could sit down together and look over your finances." There it was. She wanted a peek into my financial affairs, curious about their stakes while I'm still around. "I'll think it over," I said casually. "Catch you at dinner tomorrow." Ending the call, I smirked, not with warmth, but with a cold sense of satisfaction. That afternoon, my doorbell rang with a courier holding registered mail from Davis's office, notarized will copies, certificates, and official registration. I went through them all closely. Every sentence echoed the same message. Glenn gets a single dollar and everything else goes to charity, with the justification clearly documented to be legally sound. I took a trip to the bank, placing the documents securely in my safe deposit box alongside Sarah's jewelry and the house deed. The vault, cool and secure, felt reassuring. Locking the metal door left me feeling strategically protected. That evening, Barbara joined me at my kitchen table as I recounted the day's happenings over tea. She listened intently, understanding the legal intricacies. "Ma called you directly," she noted, stirring honey into her tea. "That's a sign of desperation. They know something's up, but they're still trying to puzzle it out. They're rattled." I nodded in agreement. "Tomorrow's dinner is going to be quite the show." Barbara put her spoon down and turned serious. "Can you handle it? Sitting across from them, engaging in small talk, all the while knowing what you do?" I caught her gaze. "I've sat through 4 decades of meetings with people who stole pension funds, smiled, shook their hands, asked about their families while secretly building cases against them. I can handle dinner with my own son." We then got busy preparing dinner together, a simple pasta dish, salad, and a bottle of red wine that Barbara brought. The mix of familiarity and newness was both strange and comforting. As Barbara stirred the sauce and I chopped vegetables, our shoulders brushed occasionally. Conversations flowed naturally, weaving through memories of better times, shared challenges, and genuine laughter. After finishing dinner, as we washed the dishes side by side, Barbara looked over. "Thank you," she whispered, "for letting me be part of this. You didn't have to include me." I put down my dish towel. "I'm really glad I did." We stood close, a tension in the air reminiscent of something long forgotten. I leaned in slowly, giving her the chance to step back. But she stayed put. The kiss was gentle, tentative, filled with a mix of sadness and hope. Two people, once hurt, finding a connection once more. We found comfort in spending time together. When it came time to part ways, Barbara's eyes lit up. With a soft grin, she half playfully said, "Did all that just happen?" I lightly touched her cheek and asked, "Are you okay with it having happened?" She nodded and murmured, "More than okay." As she prepared to head home that evening, the crispness of the night air carried the scent of early spring. "See you tomorrow," she said. "Tomorrow," I echoed, already anticipating dinner with Glenn and Maud. I'd be playing the role of the slightly confused old dad. They'd try to figure out if I was serious about selling the house. Barbara placed her hand on my chest and said, "You'll be watching everything, putting the pieces together." I put my hand over hers, thinking about my knack for investigation. Maybe I just craved this kind of big challenge. She stood on tiptoe and gave me a quick kiss on the lips. "Call me when you're home tomorrow night," she said, "or drop by if you need to." Once she was gone, I stood at my doorway, watching her walk to her house, just a couple of doors down. Suddenly my phone buzzed, a message from Glenn. "Looking forward to tomorrow, Dad. Plenty to discuss." I responded, "Looking forward to it too, son," though my reasons were different. While he wanted to haggle over money and control, I aimed to watch their every move. Tomorrow would reveal it all. With new locks on the doors, I wandered through my home, checking security cameras on my phone. The garage was empty, ready. Everything was set for what was to come. I just needed to spring their trap without getting caught myself. Friday felt heavy, like it was meant for something big. My preparation wasn't physical, but mental. I reviewed the past week's events, the signs of tampering, Glenn's panic-filled texts, and Maud's poorly hidden calls. By late afternoon, I dressed in slacks and a button-up shirt, the get-up of a trusting dad. Barbara stopped by just before I left, giving my arm a gentle squeeze. "Remember," she said, "you're only gathering information right now, not confronting them." I nodded, kissed her cheek, and promised to call afterward. The drive to Lansdale took about 30 minutes. With every mile, I slipped deeper into my part, the slightly bewildered, somewhat lonely father who still trusted his son. Glenn opened the door before I even knocked. He must have been watching out for me. "Dad, great to see you," he said, pulling me in for a hug that lingered a touch too long. Behind him, Maud stood in the hallway, her smile chilly and as polished as chrome. I mentioned I was still driving a rental due to my car needing major repairs, and saw their eyes exchange a brief look, a mix of knowing, tension, and a hint of fear. We sat at the dining table, which recently held estate documents, but now presented a perfect family meal. Pot roast, veggies, wine, all served with forced comfort. Maud, calling me Sylvester for the first time, reminded me of the pot roast I supposedly loved. Once you're aware it's all an act, it loses its charm. Glenn played the concerned son perfectly, filling my glass, asking about my week. It felt surreal. A family dinner with hidden tensions as two of us wore polite masks, while I feigned ignorance. My portrayal as the lonely dad was convincing. In the middle of dinner, I let my prepared line slip. "You know, I've been thinking about the house. It's more than I can handle now. A real estate agent believes it could go for $480,000, maybe more," I mentioned, almost like it just came to mind. Probably about $455,000 after taxes. Their reaction was immediate. Maud's hand tightened on her fork, and Glenn's smile seemed forced. I'm considering a smaller condo, maybe around $200,000, and using the rest for travel. Always wanted to see Europe, Paris, Rome, and maybe Alaska, I continued. The room was thick with tension, like moments before a storm. Maud spoke first. Sylvester, that's a huge step. Don't rush it. Glenn chimed in. Dad, the house is your life, full of memories. Are you really sure about selling? I continued, acting as if I didn't notice their discomfort. Oh, and I visited my lawyer this week, updated some papers. You know how it is, planning for the future at my age. I casually added this while continuing to eat. Their reaction was exactly what I'd expected. The tension their worried looks exchanged when they thought I wasn't watching told me everything I needed to know. Maud tossed out a question, trying her best to sound like she was just making small talk. I waved my hand dismissively. Oh, it's just some estate stuff, all the usual legal jargon. My lawyer thought it was a good idea to keep everything current. I left it at that, letting them ponder and possibly imagine the worst. The silence in the room was almost suffocating. Dessert got rushed. No one wanted coffee. Glenn and Maud were barely holding it together. When I finally said I was tired and needed to head out, the relief on their faces was nearly palpable. Drive safe, Dad, Glenn said. We'll catch up soon about the house before you make any moves. As I sat in the rental car, I watched them in the rearview mirror. The second I turned the corner, they darted back inside. I could almost hear them, frantic, angry, desperate. A few blocks later, I pulled over and gave Barbara a call. It's done, I said. They're scared senseless. Her voice was warm but tinged with concern. Are you okay? She asked. I paused, considering. I don't really know, but I've got the upper hand right now. That matters. She was silent for a beat. Tread carefully, she cautioned. An animal that's cornered is at its most dangerous. Exactly what I was counting on. Driving home blurred past in streaks of streetlights and imagined conversations. Glenn's overly tight embrace, Maud's feigned warmth, their unease when I mentioned talking to a lawyer. When I reached my driveway, my phone showed 2 missed calls from Glenn. No messages, just empty need. I didn't call him back. Instead, I roamed my house, checking the new locks on all the doors, the security cameras monitoring every corner of the garage. The phone display showed empty snapshots. My Honda was untouched, awaiting trap. I texted Barbara, "Home safe, they're scrambling." I could almost see their panic. Her reply came fast, "Be there soon." When she arrived barely 10 minutes later, I was sitting at the kitchen table in the dark. She didn't switch on the lights, just sat next to me and took my hand. "Tell me," she urged gently. And so I did. Skipping over tactics, I focused on the emotional impact. Tonight, when I looked at my son, he felt like a stranger. Worse, like an adversary. My voice shook. When did I lose him, Barbara? When did he stop being my son and turn into this? She squeezed my hand tightly. You didn't lose him. He chose this path. It's not on you. We sat there, 2 people let down by their own children, drawing comfort from each other's company. Night wrapped itself around everything outside. Somewhere Glenn and Maud were plotting their next steps, and I, despite the ache in my chest, felt prepared. Saturday arrived cloaked in normality. I woke up next to Barbara. She'd stayed over. Neither of us wanted to be alone. We shared morning coffee under the gentle morning light, talked about the small, everyday things, letting normality shield us from the escalating situation. By the afternoon, Barbara went back home. I decided on a grocery run. Milk, bread, all the usual essentials that life insists on despite the chaos. The store was bustling with others doing the same. I wandered the aisles deep in thought, replaying last night's dinner. Turning onto my street, my stomach dropped seeing Glenn's car in my driveway. He was at the front door, restless, tapping away on his phone, buzzing with nervous energy. As I pulled up, he glanced up sharply. "Dad, we need to talk." No greeting, straight to business. I took my time unloading the groceries, using those moments to gather myself. My heart pounded, but my hands were steady. "Sure, son, let's talk inside." I unlocked the door, the new locks, keys Glenn didn't have, and we stepped in. The air shifted with him there, like it was tainted. I set the grocery bags down in the kitchen. No coffee offers, just tension. Glenn couldn't keep still, pacing around the living room, unable to calm down. "Dad, about the house," he started. I kept my face calm. "Yes?" His voice rose. "This house, it's a part of our family. It should stay with us. Mom lived here. I grew up here. You can't just sell it." I recognized the angle, the pull on family ties. "This is my house, Glenn. I have the right to decide." His demeanor unraveled. "But what about me? About your family? Aren't we important too?" Now his entitlement was on full display, no more pretending. "Of course you matter, but I don't get why you're so—" "I'm talking about my own decisions for my own home." Glenn stopped moving and stared directly at me. His face flushed, his jaw clenched because he desired it to be his. "I'm your kid," said Glenn, like he was pointing a finger right at me. "I should have some right to it." His words just kind of sat there, heavy and awkward, like when a big noise suddenly stops. I felt stuck, trying to absorb his idea that he somehow deserved what I'd busted my ass for. I think Glenn realized he'd said too much, but he couldn't stop now. "Dad, I'm drowning here, 75 grand in debt. Mom and we can't handle it." His words were tripping over each other as he tried to fix his blurt. "We think you should keep the house for memories, you know, for the family." But then his voice got shaky. If everything had just gone according to plan, and like that, he just cut off, his face going pale as silence settled in. Barely finding my voice, I managed to ask, "What plan, Glenn?" As soon as I said it, tension just flared up between us. Glenn shuffled toward the door. "Nothing, I didn't mean, I moved closer. "You mean if I'd driven my car last week? If the brakes had somehow stopped working? If I hadn't made it through the crash you'd been counting on?" His face turned whiter than a sheet. You're not—" He just couldn't spit it out. "Get out," I said, my voice so icy it could have frozen the room. Glenn fumbled with the doorknob and disappeared into the warm afternoon sun, his car peeling away from my driveway with a screech that matched the chaos inside me. I stood there until he was completely out of sight. Then I closed the door, locking away everything he'd said. Shaking, I picked up my phone and called Detective Rodriguez. I told him Glenn basically admitted it. Not straight up, but enough to make my skin crawl. Rodriguez was all business as usual. "Did you record it?" he wanted to know. I shut my eyes before I answered. "No, I didn't see him coming today." Rodriguez let out a sigh that spoke of both frustration and sympathy. "It's something, but not enough to put him away. We need more." After hanging up, I reached out to Barbara. She showed up quickly and found me on the couch, shaking, not from fear, but from the realization that my own son had betrayed me. She pulled me into her arms. "You're doing what's right," she said softly. "It's his choices that brought us here, not yours." We stayed like that for who knows how long, me clinging to the comfort her hug offered, as my tears finally broke free. As night wrapped itself around the house, Barbara made some tea, but neither of us touched it. We stayed on the couch, her arm steady around my shoulder, my head resting on hers. "What's next?" she asked eventually. My voice was rough from all the crying when I replied, "We wait. Rodriguez has him on tape slipping up, but we need more. We need enough to lock him up." Barbara shifted so she could look at me. "The camera in the garage, if he tries again—" "If he tries again," I finished, tension in every word, "we'll catch him. This time, He won't get away with it. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, and Glenn's name flashed on the screen. With a mix of dread and reluctant hope, I picked it up and read his message out loud. Dad, I'm really sorry about earlier. I'm just worried about you. I care. Barbara let out a noise that said exactly what she thought of his words, and I found myself staring at the message. Did he seriously think I'd fall for that after everything? Carefully, I typed a response. We'll talk later. I need some space. I sent it and dropped my phone back down. Not confronting him? Barbara asked. Not yet, I said, keeping my cool. Not until I have everything I need. I'm sure he'll try again. I can feel it. And when he does, I'll be ready. Outside, the night had thickened, with streetlights casting faint circles of light in the dark. My garage cameras stood ready like a trap, waiting for him. The hardest part was now to hang tight. Patience would be my quiet ally. Sunday dawned with a deceptive calm. The house was still, only the fridge hummed and distant bird songs floated in the air. Barbara, who had spent the night, didn't want either of us to be alone. She was in the kitchen, making coffee, when my phone rang. Seeing Detective Rodriguez's name, my stomach did a little flip. Mr. Gray, Rodriguez said, his voice buzzing with a hint of urgency. We've got something on the cameras. You need to come to the station now. Mid-sip, my coffee cup paused. When exactly? I asked, my voice steady but tense. Last night, actually early this morning, Barbara replied, around 3:20 a.m. Barbara reached across the table to hold my hand, and I gripped it tightly. I'm heading over, I said. Inside Rodriguez's office, Barbara and I sat quietly watching the surveillance footage. The timestamp was frozen at 03:20 a.m., showing an empty garage that suddenly came to life as motion sensors kicked in. The door swung open, the lock clearly damaged by force. A shadowy figure entered. It was Glenn. Dressed in dark clothes with a small toolbox in hand, he moved directly toward the Honda. Placing the tools down, he opened the driver's door and reached toward the steering column, but then stopped, frozen. Glenn turned his head slowly, scanning the garage. Though the cameras were hidden, something had apparently spooked him. Maybe it was a gut instinct, or the faint hum of electronics. He stood there completely still for nearly a minute before he abruptly closed the car door, collected his things, and left quickly. He hadn't touched the brakes, but his intentions couldn't have been clearer. Rodriguez paused the video. We've got clear evidence of breaking and entering. He was in your garage with tools, aiming for your car, the same car that had its brakes tampered with before. Coupled with the mechanic's report of the previous sabotage, his accidental confession, and a financial motive. Rodriguez locked eyes with me. We have enough to get an arrest warrant for attempted murder, breaking and entering, possibly conspiracy if we link his wife. But I need to ask, are you prepared to press charges against your son? Once we start, there's no going back. I stared at Glenn's image frozen on the screen, his face tense and guilty under the harsh infrared light. Barbara's hand was warm in mine. Memories of Glenn as a boy flashed before me. His first bike ride, high school graduation, his wedding day. Then reality hit me. The dinners we'd had where I pretended not to notice my son's desire to get rid of me all over $75,000 of debt, choosing money over a father's life. I spoke steadily. Yes, I'm ready to press charges. Rodriguez nodded and picked up the phone. I'll get the warrant. By early afternoon, Rodriguez called me again. He's in custody. We picked him up at work. Back home, Barbara and I sat on the couch. I thought I'd feel relieved or justified, but instead, there was just a hollow emptiness. So, what's next? I asked. Arraignment is on Monday. Because it's an attempted murder charge against a family member, the bail will be set high, maybe not even granted. His lawyer might look for a plea deal. After hanging up, I sat in silence. Barbara asked if I was all right, but I had no words. Then the phone rang, an unknown number on the screen. I answered to hear Ma's voice, almost hysterical with anger. You really got him arrested? Your own son? What kind of father does that? All her usual manipulation had dropped, replaced by pure rage. He tried to kill me, Ma. Twice. It's on video. She ignored this, almost screaming. You're destroying everything. His life, our lives. And for what? Money? Just because he asked for help? Ice cold, I replied. He cut my brake lines, Ma. He broke into the garage to try again. The police have the proof. Here's some advice. Get yourself a good lawyer if you're involved in this. I ended the call and blocked both her and Glenn's numbers. Barbara and I walked to the back porch, sitting together under the late afternoon sky. Holding my hand, she stayed quiet. I finally exhaled after what felt like an eternity. The sun melted into hues of orange and pink, unusually warm for early March. We watched silently as the daylight faded. My phone sat on the table, the silence deepened by the blocked numbers. An unwelcome chapter forcefully closed. Gently breaking the silence, Barbara said, Tomorrow, you'll need to testify at the arraignment. Are you ready? I took a moment, then replied, Can anyone really be ready to testify against their own child? But I'll do it. I'll tell the truth. She nodded and left it at that. In a tucked-away corner of the city, Glenn found himself in a jail cell, gradually coming to terms with the gravity of everything he'd done. Meanwhile, Ma was likely juggling calls with lawyers, figuring out how to cut ties with her husband and son. But as I sat on the porch, I found a sense of calm that had eluded me since that frustrating evening when my car wouldn't start. I wouldn't say I was happy, the hurt was still raw, but there was relief. Relief in knowing I was out of danger, that the wheels of justice were turning, and that my days of constantly looking over my shoulder were behind me. Barbara stood up and extended her hand with a gentle smile. Let's head inside. I'll put together something simple for dinner. I took her hand, grateful for the support as I got up. From the window, I could clearly see the driveway, the very spot where this whole messy ordeal began. The kitchen was lit with a cozy, welcoming glow, made even warmer with someone like Barbara by my side. She understood firsthand the sting of betrayal, yet she was proof that you can make it through to the other side. Being around her showed me that surviving isn't just about being safe. It's about choosing to really live, even when you've almost had it all taken away. Together we stepped inside, leaving behind the encroaching darkness of the evening and ready to face whatever tomorrow might bring. The week after Glenn's arrest was a blur of legal maneuvers. First came the arraignment on Monday. Glenn shuffled into the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit, hands shackled, eyes focused on anything but me. The severity of what he'd done, coupled with the risk he'd run, meant no bail for him. His court-appointed lawyer wasted no time in discussing potential plea deals. By midweek, there was an offer on the table. I met with the prosecutor, a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 40s, who laid out the options. Attempted first-degree murder could carry 20 years in prison, she explained, but getting a jury to convict wasn't a given, even with solid evidence. Glenn's attorney suggested a plea for assault with intent to cause major harm and breaking and entering. A 6-year sentence, with the chance for parole after 4 for good behavior. She paused, waiting for my call. We can go to trial if you want, she said. I weighed the prospects of months spent in court, recounting it all over again, against the chance to move on with Barbara. I chose, let's go with the deal. 6 years seemed fitting. The courtroom was modest, wood-paneled and harshly lit by fluorescent bulbs. Sitting there with Barbara gripping my hand, I listened as the prosecutor recited the plea terms. Glenn stood before the judge, shoulders hunched. Mr. Gray, do you recognize that you're admitting guilt to assault, with intent to inflict serious harm and breaking and entering? The judge asked. Glenn's response was barely more than a mumble. Yes, Your Honor. The judge continued, Are you aware that this means 6 years in prison with a chance of parole after 4? Yes, Glenn repeated. The judge signed the agreement, and in mere moments, 35 years of shared history were sealed. As Glenn was led away, he glanced back, our eyes meeting across the room. There was no malice in his look, no rebellion, just emptiness. But maybe, lurking beneath it, a hint of understanding was finally forming. He mouthed, "I'm sorry." The words were spoken quietly, only loud enough for those nearby. I gave a small nod, not as a token of forgiveness or reconciliation, but simply acknowledging the words. Then Glenn vanished through a side door. Later, the prosecutor touched base with me. "There's no case against his wife," she told me. "We couldn't tie her to anything illegal. She's already started divorce proceedings and plans to move out of state, cutting ties with him completely." I wasn't taken aback. Maud had always been driven by status and comfort. A convicted husband did not fit into that plan. "Do you think she'll try to contact me?" I inquired. The prosecutor shook her head. "Your restraining order stands. She knows not to cross that line." Yet another worry resolved. Another chapter in this daunting saga closed. A month drifted by, and April brought warm, sunny days to the lake's park. Barbara and I meandered down the path, our fingers laced together. She'd sold her place and moved in with me, our belongings now mingling as we settled into this new life that felt as natural as breathing. We were planning a summer wedding, nothing grand, just a gathering of close friends and Barbara's sister. The ceremony would take place in her friend's garden, keeping it simple and heartfelt. I've redone my will too, leaving half to the Montgomery County Children's Hospital Foundation and the other half to Barbara. The house that Glenn once coveted had become a lively place filled with laughter and music, a sanctuary from the emptiness it used to represent. Later that evening, there was an envelope in the mail, marked with a prison postmark and Glenn's familiar handwriting. I paused at the mailbox before taking it inside. Barbara noticed, but didn't say anything. Sitting at our kitchen table, I held the letter without opening it. "Glenn wrote to me," I told her. Barbara paused, setting her teacup down. "Do you feel like reading it?" she asked softly. I glanced at the envelope, flipping it around in my grasp. "Not today, maybe someday," I said, tucking it away in a drawer. Today was about living in the present, about us and what's ahead. Barbara smiled warmly, reaching for my hand. "How about we go on that walk we talked about?" she suggested. "It's such a lovely evening." So we headed out, just the two of us hand in hand. In our 60s now, we had faced some of life's toughest challenges, particularly with our children. Yet here we were, unexpectedly given another chance to love and trust anew. That letter rested quietly in a drawer, waiting for a time that may never arrive. But today, living pulled stronger than past regrets. We strolled the park, where trees were waking from winter and the lake shimmered with sunset colors. Other couples passed us by, lost in their own worlds. Barbara and I walked leisurely, no rush, nowhere else we needed to be. "Does he cross your mind?" Barbara asked, breaking our comfortable silence. I pondered a moment before replying, "Sometimes. I wonder when he changed, when my son became someone who could betray me like that." I gave her hand a firm squeeze. "But it's in the past. His choices are his to deal with now." Barbara nodded, then asked, "And you? What are you carrying?" I stopped, turning to face her as the setting sun caught the silver in her hair, her expression kind and knowing. "I'm living with you," I said. With this shot at happiness I thought I'd missed. Understanding that family isn't just about blood, it's about who stands beside you when everything falls apart. She stood on tiptoe and gave me a gentle kiss. "That's a great answer," she replied with a smile. We continued our walk, eventually heading home as darkness gently settled in. Glenn's letter stayed unread, trapped in its own time, awaiting a moment that might not ever come. But in the here and now, I was walking hand in hand with Barbara Clark, a gift of a second chance earned through endurance, courage, and the choice to trust again. Ahead was our home, aglow with lights, filled with shared meals, conversations, and the peacefulness of company. Justice had been done, security was assured, and beyond all odds, life had become precious and meaningful once again. Not in spite of past betrayals, but because I had overcome them, choosing truth and justice over resentment, welcoming love when it appeared after the storm. The evening air was sweet with the scent of spring blossoms. Somewhere nearby, a bird sang its last song before nightfall, and I, Sylvester Gray, 63 years old, a retired auditor and survivor of my son's attempt on my life, walked beside the woman I love, ready to embrace whatever tomorrow brings.